Commander Sarachin stood at the observation deck of the UES Hawking, watching the crystalline spires of the Artaxian capital ship shimmer against the backdrop of distant stars. 6 months into humanity's first major diplomatic mission beyond their solar system, and something still felt wrong. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial about their new allies. "Commander." Lieutenant Rivera's voice broke through her thoughts. The Artaxian High Council is ready to begin the final treaty negotiations. Sarah straightened her dress uniform, squaring her shoulders. "Any word from our research team?" Dr. Harrison's last transmission was unclear. Something about anomalies in their biological data. The signal cut out before he could elaborate. That uneasy feeling in Sarah's gut intensified. The Artaxians had appeared seemingly out of nowhere 18 months ago, offering humanity membership in their galactic coalition. Their technology was centuries ahead of Earth's, their manner perfectly diplomatic. Too perfect. The walk to the negotiation chamber felt longer than usual. The Artaxian ship's corridors were beautiful, with their flowing geometric patterns and soft bioluminescent lighting. But Sarah had started noticing things, how the patterns seemed to shift when no one was looking directly at them, how certain sections of the ship were permanently off-limits to the human delegation. High Counselor Vextra waited in the chamber, his iridescent scales catching the light as he bowed in greeting. The Artaxians were beautiful creatures, reminiscent of Earth's marine life with their flowing fins and graceful movements. "Commander Chin, we are most pleased to conclude our negotiations today." Sarah took her seat across from him, noting the absence of several familiar faces. "I don't see Dr. Harrison or his team present." Vextra's fins rippled in what Sarah had learned to interpret as discomfort. "They requested additional time in our medical facilities. Their research was quite engaging." The meeting proceeded with the usual diplomatic niceties, but Sarah's attention was split between the treaty text and her growing suspicions. It wasn't until page 47, subsection 12, that she spotted it. A seemingly innocent clause about biological harmonization requirements. "High Counselor," she interrupted smoothly, "could you elaborate on this particular section? The translation seems unclear." Vextra's secondary fins twitched, a micro-expression she'd never seen before. "A mere formality, Commander. Standard procedures for integrating new species into the coalition." Sarah's hand brushed against the small device in her pocket, a gift from Dr. Harrison before his disappearance. "Interesting. Because our xenobiologists found something rather different when they analyzed your genetic archives." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vextra's pupils contracted to pinpoints. "Commander, I'm afraid you're overstepping diplomatic bounds." "Am I? Or did you think we wouldn't notice that every species in your coalition has undergone extensive genetic modification? That they're all perfectly compatible with Artaxian biochemistry?" The other council members were rising now, their movements losing that practiced grace, becoming something more predatory. Sarah activated Harrison's device. Across the ship, every human crew member would be receiving his final message, along with proof of what the Artaxians really were. "You could have been perfect," Vextra said, his voice distorting. "Your species has such potential. We would have made you beautiful. We're already perfect just as we are." Sarah's hand moved to her sidearm. "And humanity doesn't take kindly to being someone else's science experiment." The ship's alarms began to wail. On cue, the human fleet emerged from FTL, surrounding the Artaxian vessel. They'd been waiting, watching, gathering evidence for months. "Your people's paranoia is disappointing," Vextra sighed. "We offer transcendence, and you respond with violence." Sarah stood, her weapon drawn but not yet raised. "No, we respond with choice. Something you never gave the others. How many species did you perfect before reaching Earth? How many civilizations did you reshape in your image?" The chamber's doors slid open, revealing armed guards, both human and Artaxian. But among them were faces she recognized, some of the converted species, their eyes clear for the first time in generations. "Your control is slipping, Counselor. Dr. Harrison's last gift to us was a way to break your biological conditioning. Those you thought were your perfect subjects are waking up." Vextra's beautiful form was changing now, revealing something ancient and terrible beneath the surface. You have no idea what you're doing. The galaxy needs order. Unity. Perfection. No, Sarah countered, as chaos erupted around them. It needs freedom. And we're going to give it back. The battle that followed would be remembered as humanity's first true test among the stars. Not just a fight for survival, but a fight for the right of every species to choose their own path. And it was only the beginning. Tal's modified wings folded silently against his back as he landed on the dark side of the human stealth vessel. The gene-locked security systems didn't recognize him anymore, not since Dr. Harrison's treatment had freed him from Artaxian control. He smiled grimly, remembering how proud his former masters had been of their perfect security. Eagle's Nest, this is Shadowfeather. I'm in position, he whispered into his comm unit. Commander Chen's voice came back, clear and steady. Confirmed, Shadowfeather. The rest of the team is ready. Remember, we need those research files intact. Tal moved across the hull of the massive Artaxian research facility, his specialized suit keeping him invisible to their sensors. Inside, thousands of his people, the real Artaxians, not their ruling class, were still trapped in the beautiful lie of perfection. But not for long. 3 months had passed since the failed treaty negotiations, and the galaxy was at war. But not the kind of war anyone had expected. While the Artaxian Empire's ships engaged human forces in spectacular space battles, the real fight was happening in laboratories and medical bays across hundreds of worlds. Sarah watched Tal's progress from the bridge of the newly commissioned U.S. Prometheus. When he'd first defected, many hadn't trusted him. But she'd seen something in his eyes, the same fire for freedom that burned in every human heart. Multiple signatures approaching, Lieutenant Rivera reported. Looks like the night shift rotation. Right on schedule, Sarah muttered. Team 2, you're up. On another part of the facility, human infiltration specialists merged with the shadows. They wore suits reverse-engineered from Artaxian tech, but with a distinctly human twist. Where the Artaxians sought perfection in uniformity, humanity had learned to perfect adaptation itself. Tal reached the access point, his modified genetics allowing him to interface with the system. Images flooded his mind, memories of when he'd worked here, believing he was helping to uplift lesser species to join their perfect society. The truth had nearly broken him. I'm in, he transmitted. But we have a problem. They're not just storing research here. There are subjects. Hundreds of them. Sarah's breath caught. What kind of subjects? New species. Ones they haven't announced to the coalition yet. They're still in early conversion stages. Still themselves, mostly. The mission parameters shifted instantly in Sarah's mind. This wasn't just about gathering intelligence anymore. Change of plans. Team 2, prepare for mass evacuation protocols. Tal, can you get to environmental controls? Already on it, Commander. But there's something else. His voice turned grim. They have humans here. The bridge fell silent. Sarah's hands gripped her command chair. How many? At least 50. Looks like they were captured from fringe colonies. They're being used to perfect the new conversion process. The Artaxians found our genetic diversity challenging. Sarah's jaw tightened. Get those people out. Whatever it takes. Rivera, signal the fleet. Tell them to be ready for hot extraction. Tal moved deeper into the facility, disabling security systems as he went. The humans had taught him something the Artaxians had engineered out of their society generations ago: improvisation. Where an Artaxian would seek the perfect solution, humans taught him to find the possible one. The first alarm went off just as Team 2 reached the detention levels. Not the blaring chaos of a human alarm, but the soft, insistent chime the Artaxians used to maintain order. Perfect, even in crisis. They know we're here, Rivera reported. Good, Sarah replied, surprising her crew. Tal, implement protocol chaos. Across the facility, every system began to fail simultaneously, but not in the perfect, coordinated way the Artaxians would expect. Instead, systems crashed randomly, Backup systems activated and failed in bizarre patterns, and the entire facility's perfectly regulated environment began to fluctuate wildly. You can't maintain perfect control in an imperfect universe, Sarah broadcast on all frequencies. That's humanity's gift to you, the beauty of chaos. The rescue teams moved fast, using the confusion to their advantage. The captive humans, though weakened, needed little encouragement to fight. And the newly discovered species, seeing their first chance at freedom, joined the rebellion. Tal found himself leading a group of escaped prisoners through maintenance tunnels, his modified wings now serving as shields against security measures. Commander, we're approaching extraction point Beta. But they're adapting to the chaos faster than expected. They always do, Sarah replied. Time for the human touch. Rivera, light it up. The U.S. Prometheus decloaked directly above the facility, its weapons targeting specific structural points. Not to destroy, but to create exactly the kind of asymmetric damage that would drive the facility's perfect systems into complete confusion. As escape pods launched and teleporters activated, Sarah watched the sensor readings carefully. They wouldn't get another chance at this facility. The Artaxians never made the same mistake twice. But they'd achieved something far more valuable than just a rescue mission. Look, Tal said as he helped the last group of refugees aboard. They're beginning to question. The perfect facade is cracking. Sarah nodded. The facility's staff, the perfect Artaxians, were showing signs of confusion, of independent thought. Some had even helped the prisoners escape. Perfection is a cage, she said quietly. And sometimes the most perfect thing you can do is choose to be flawed. As the Prometheus jumped to safety with its precious cargo, Sarah knew the war had entered a new phase. The Artaxian Empire's greatest weakness wasn't their technology or their strategy, it was the very perfection they sought to impose on the galaxy. Deep within the secured quantum communications room of U.S. Prometheus, Dr. Emily Harrison stared at the message from her father. The last transmission, sent moments before his disappearance, finally made sense. The holographic data swirled before her, revealing the true horror of the Artaxian genetic manipulation program. It's not just modification, she explained to Commander Chen and Tal. It's complete rewriting. They're not uplifting species. They're erasing them, replacing everything that makes them unique with their own template of perfection. Sarah studied the complex genetic maps floating in the air. Can we use this to help those already converted? Maybe. Emily manipulated the data, highlighting specific sequences. But what's more interesting is what they couldn't change. Human DNA has something they've never encountered before, adaptive chaos markers. We don't just evolve, we evolve unpredictably. Tal's wings rustled softly. That's why they needed the research facility. We found humans, resistant to standard conversion protocols. The facility raid had been 3 weeks ago, and the intelligence gathered was still being processed. But time was running out. The Artaxian Empire had dropped all pretense of diplomacy, launching full-scale attacks on human colonies. Commander, Rivera's voice came through the intercom. Priority message from Earth Command. The Artaxians have launched something new. They're calling it the Unity Protocol. The tactical display lit up with incoming data. Across multiple sectors, Artaxian ships were releasing clouds of engineered nanites into the atmosphere of populated worlds. The effects were immediate and horrifying. They're trying to force-convert entire populations at once, Emily whispered, watching the footage. But this is rushed, imperfect. They're getting desperate. Sarah's expression hardened. Because we showed the galaxy their true face. How long until they reach Earth? At current speed? Rivera calculated. 72 hours. Then we break protocol. Sarah turned to Tal. You said there were others like you, high-ranking Artaxians who questioned the Empire. Can you reach them? Tal's bioluminescent patterns shifted thoughtfully. It would mean exposing our entire network. Everything we've built in secret. We're out of time for secrets. Sarah activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the commander. What I'm about to do violates every regulation in the book. Anyone who wants to stay within protocol should report to the shuttle bay now. No questions asked, no marks on your record. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Not a single crew member moved. Emily stepped forward. I can modify my father's treatment. Make it airborne like their nanites. Give everyone the choice to break free. Do it. Sarah turned to Tal. Contact your people. Tell them it's time. Rivera, set course for the Empire's homeworld. The homeworld. Tal's wings flared in shock. Their defenses are perfect. Sarah smiled grimly. Exactly. And perfect defenses don't know how to handle imperfect attacks. Emily, how long to modify the treatment? 6 hours for the base modification. Another 12 to weaponize it for atmospheric dispersal. They'll detect us long before we get close enough, Rivera warned. No, they won't. Sarah pulled up the tactical display. Because we're going to do something so monumentally stupid that their perfect tactical algorithms won't even consider it as a possibility. The plan came together quickly. It violated every rule of space combat, every principle of tactical engagement. It was, by any reasonable standard, suicide. It was also perfectly human. The U.S. Prometheus would dive into a sun, using the stellar matter itself as a shield and propulsion system. The ship's experimental heat shields, combined with Tal's knowledge of Artaxian sensor blind spots, would allow them to slingshot around the star at speeds that would fry any normal vessel systems. The gravitational distortion will multiply our mass, Emily explained, her fingers flying over calculations. When we emerge, we'll be moving faster than their defense grid can track. We'll have exactly 2.3 seconds to release the treatment before their systems adapt. And if we're off by even a microsecond? Rivera asked. Then we join my father in the grand scientific tradition of dying for discovery, Emily replied with a grim smile. As the crew prepared for what might be their final mission, Sarah found Tal in the observation deck, watching the stars. Having second thoughts? She asked. No. He turned to her, his once perfect features now showing signs of natural aging, a beautiful imperfection. I'm thinking about what my people were before the Empire. We were explorers once, embracing the chaos of discovery. Somewhere along the way, we became so afraid of the unknown that we tried to make everything known, everything perfect. After this, there's no going back, Sarah warned. Win or lose, the Empire ends today. Tal nodded. Perhaps it's time for something new. Something imperfect. The alert sounded. They were approaching the star. As the crew strapped in for what would either be their finest hour or their last, Sarah thought about all the species fighting for freedom across the galaxy. About the perfect lie they'd been living under for so long. All hands, she announced, prepare for stellar insertion. And remember, perfection is overrated. The U.S. Prometheus screamed through the corona of the star, its shields glowing white-hot. Inside, the crew endured crushing gravitational forces as their ship rode a wave of stellar plasma. Warning systems blared as multiple systems approached critical failure. Stellar ejection in 10 seconds. Rivera shouted over the roar of straining engines. 8, 7. Sarah watched the tactical display through eyes blurred by G-forces. The Artaxian homeworld hung in space ahead of them, its perfect defense grid arranged in mathematically precise patterns. Beautiful, predictable, vulnerable. Treatment dispersal systems ready, Emily reported from her station, her voice strained. One shot at this. Now, Sarah commanded as they burst from the stellar matter, their ship trailing fire like an ancient angel of revelation. The Artaxian defense grid, for all its perfection, took 1.2 seconds to recognize the impossible object hurtling toward their atmosphere. Another 0.8 seconds to classify it as a threat. By then, it was too late. The Prometheus dove through the gaps in their formation, its hull screaming in protest. Emily's modified treatment, a combination of Dr. Harrison's original cure and something uniquely human, dispersed into the upper atmosphere in a glittering cloud. Treatment dispersal complete, Emily announced. But our shields are gone. We have maybe minutes before. Multiple ships approaching, Rivera interrupted. They're firing on each other. Through the viewport, Sarah watched as chaos erupted across the Artaxian fleet. Ships previously moving in perfect formation began breaking ranks. On the surface below, the treatment was already taking effect. Millions of minds, perfectly controlled for generations, were awakening to choice. "This is High Commander Vextra to all ships," a familiar voice burst across all frequencies. "The human vessel must be destroyed at all costs. The Unity must be preserved." "Second wave incoming," Rivera warned. "They're adapting to the confusion. Targeting solutions locked." But before the loyal ships could fire, something unexpected happened. From the surface of the planet, ancient defense platforms, once thought deactivated for centuries, suddenly came online. "How?" Sarah began. Tal laughed, a sound of pure joy. "The archives. The treatment didn't just free minds, it reactivated genetic memory. My people are remembering who they were before the Unity. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. The perfectly coordinated Artaxian fleet, faced with both internal rebellion and newly awakened ancient defenses, found itself fighting an enemy it had never trained for: chaos itself." "Commander," Emily called out urgently. "The treatment, it's having an unexpected effect. It's not just breaking their conditioning, it's triggering rapid evolutionary responses. They're changing." On the main screen, they watched as Artaxian ships began transforming. Some grew organic extensions, others shifted into forms that defied conventional physics. The perfect uniformity of their civilization was dissolving into a riot of individual expression. "Their bodies are remembering too," Emily explained, amazed. "All those suppressed adaptations, generations of enforced stasis, it's all coming back." Sarah made a decision. "Open a channel to all frequencies. To everyone." When the channel was ready, she spoke not as a military commander, but as one sentient being to another. "People of the Empire, you're free. Not just from control, but from the burden of perfection. Look around you. See the beauty in chaos, in difference, in choice. This isn't an end. It's an evolution." The response came not in words, but in actions. Across the planet, ancient parks and wilderness zones, long paved over in the name of perfect order, began to break through the geometric cities. The Artaxian people, their bodies and minds newly awakened, began to change in ways even they couldn't predict. "Incoming transmission," Rivera announced. "From everywhere." The bridge crew watched in awe as the holographic display filled with faces, hundreds, thousands of them. Artaxians in various stages of transformation, their once uniform features now wildly diverse. Among them were representatives of every species the Empire had uplifted, each now expressing their true nature. "We remember," they said, not in perfect unison, but in a beautiful chaos of voices. "We choose." But victory came with a price. The Prometheus, its systems fatally compromised by the stellar journey, was dying. As emergency alerts blared through the ship, Sarah realized they had one last choice to make. "All hands," she announced, "prepare for emergency descent. We're going to show our new friends one last human trick: how to survive the impossible." The Prometheus fell through the Artaxian atmosphere like a wounded bird, trailing debris and plasma. Sarah had ordered all power diverted to the remaining structural integrity fields, leaving them essentially flying blind. The perfect geometric cities below were transforming, organic shapes erupting through artificial order as the population embraced their newfound freedom. "Hull temperature critical," Rivera reported calmly, despite the chaos around them. "We've lost engines 3 through 6. Stabilizers gone. And something's happening to the ship itself." Emily's hands flew across her console, analyzing the readings. "It's the treatment. It's affecting our hybrid systems. The Artaxian tech we incorporated is responding, trying to adapt." The ship shuddered, but not from damage. The hull was changing, the merger of human and Artaxian technology creating something entirely new. Organic structures grew along the corridors, supporting failing systems with living architecture. "Like the body healing itself," Tal whispered, watching in awe. "Your technology and ours, finally working in true harmony." But their problems were far from over. High Commander Vextra's loyalist forces, though diminished, were rallying. A group of ships that had resisted the treatment's effects formed up to make one final attack. "They're targeting the major population centers," Rivera warned. "If they can't maintain control, they'll try to purge the imperfection," Sarah finished grimly. Not on my watch. Emily, can we broadcast another dose of the treatment? Systems are too damaged. We'd need. Emily's eyes widened. The ship. The new organic components. They're producing their own version of the treatment. More refined, more evolved. Sarah understood immediately. We're not just a delivery system anymore. We're a catalyst. She opened a channel to all surviving human ships in the sector. This is Commander Chun. All vessels with hybrid tech converge on my position. We're about to teach the Empire one last lesson about humanity. The response was immediate. Dozens of ships, each bearing some combination of human and Artaxian technology, moved to join them. As they descended through the atmosphere, the organic changes spread from ship to ship, creating a living network. Multiple impacts. Rivera called out as Vextra's forces opened fire. They're trying to break our formation. But something extraordinary was happening. Where ships were hit, others moved to protect them, organic tendrils linking damaged vessels together. The fleet was becoming a single organism, guided by human intuition and powered by Artaxian adaptation. They still don't understand, Tal said, watching the battle unfold. Perfect order cannot defeat evolved chaos. The unified fleet moved as one, not with the precision of machines, but with the fluid grace of a living thing. When Vextra's forces fired, the fleet rippled and flowed around the attacks. When they tried to predict its movements, it changed patterns randomly. Emily's voice was filled with wonder as she reported, the organic network is amplifying the treatment. It's not just breaking conditioning anymore, it's offering choices. Every person down there, every ship out here, is being shown possibilities. Futures. Choices. Through the viewport, Sarah watched as the last of Vextra's ships began to change. Their perfect formations dissolved as crews chose freedom over control. The rigid geometric patterns of their hulls flowered into organic forms, each unique, each an expression of its crew's newly awakened identity. But the real revolution was happening on the surface. The capital city, once a monument to ordered perfection, had become a living artwork of change. Buildings flowed into new forms, streets curved and spiraled, and everywhere, people were transforming, not into a single perfect form, but into countless expressions of themselves. Commander, Rivera said softly, High Commander Vextra's ship, it's requesting permission to dock. Sarah shared a look with Tal. Granted. Let's show them what real unity looks like. As the Prometheus settled onto what had once been the perfectly manicured grounds of the Unity Command, Sarah knew that this wasn't just a victory. It was a beginning. The hard part, learning to live with chaos, with choice, with imperfection, was just starting. But as she watched humans and Artaxians working together to heal the wounded and rebuild, she saw something more beautiful than perfection, possibility. The dawn broke over the transformed Artaxian capital, casting light on a city that no longer strived for perfection. 1 month after the Battle of Choice, as historians were already calling it, Sarah stood in the newly formed Council of Evolution, watching representatives from across the galaxy gather to forge a new path forward. Former High Commander Vextra, his once perfect form now bearing the marks of natural aging and personal choice, approached the podium. The chamber fell silent, hundreds of species, both former Empire members and newly contacted civilizations, waiting to hear from the symbol of the old order. For 10,000 years, he began, his voice carrying the weight of revelation, we thought perfection was our destiny. We sought to impose order on a chaotic universe. But in doing so, we nearly destroyed the very thing that makes life precious, the right to choose our own path. Emily and Tal sat beside Sarah, their research teams having worked tirelessly to help manage the massive changes sweeping across former Empire space. The treatment hadn't just freed minds, it had unleashed millennia of suppressed evolution, leading to an explosion of diversity that challenged every assumption about what was possible. The hardest part, Tal explained to a group of newly arrived human diplomats, has been learning to embrace uncertainty. We were taught that chaos was the enemy. Now we understand it's the source of all growth. The evidence was everywhere. Cities that had once been identical now expressed the unique character of their inhabitants. Ships that had once moved in perfect formation now displayed individual modifications and organic growth. Even the quantum communication network had evolved, becoming a living system that adapted to its users' needs. But not everyone celebrated the change. Pockets of resistance remained, those who clung to the old dream of perfection. Sarah's fleet, now permanently transformed by the merger of human and Artaxian technology, had become peacekeepers of a different sort, not enforcing order, but protecting choice. "We've detected another isolation colony," Rivera reported during a routine briefing. "Former Unity loyalists trying to maintain the old ways." "Send an envoy," Sarah ordered. "Remind them that the choice to remain as they are is protected, as long as they extend the same right to others." The greatest challenge had been helping both humans and Artaxians navigate their new relationship with technology. The organic-mechanical hybrid systems that had evolved during the battle had spread, offering new possibilities for cooperation between artificial and natural life. Emily's research team had discovered that the treatment hadn't just affected biological systems, it had fundamentally altered how consciousness interfaced with technology. The rigid boundaries between organic and artificial, like so many other perfect divisions, had begun to blur. "It's not about becoming perfect anymore," Emily explained to the council. "It's about becoming more fully ourselves, whatever that means for each individual and species." As the council session drew to a close, Sarah found herself in the transformed gardens of the former Unity Command. The once geometrical paths now wound naturally through groves of trees that had broken free from centuries of careful cultivation. Here and there, remnants of the old order remained, not destroyed, but incorporated into something new and alive. Vextra found her there, his transformed appearance now bearing traces of his species' ancient, pre-Unity form. "You know," he said, "I spent my entire life believing that humanity would either be our perfect subjects or our greatest failure. I never considered you might be our salvation." "Not salvation," Sarah corrected. "Just a reminder of something your people once knew, that the universe is too vast and wonderful for any single definition of perfection." Above them, ships from 100 worlds moved through the sunset sky, each one unique, each one choosing its own path. The perfect uniformity of the Empire had given way to something far more beautiful, a galaxy of choices, of changes, of endless possibility. "So," Tal asked, joining them in the garden, "what do we do now?" Sarah smiled, watching as a group of children, human and Artaxian and others, played among the wild-growing flowers. "Now? Now we do what humanity has always done. We explore. We adapt. We choose. And most importantly, we never stop evolving."